our Zoom bookends. So I know this is new for everybody, but it's kind of exciting that we get to continue carrying on the bookends, even though we have to all stay home. Today we have an amazing author, Margi Preus, an award-winning young reader author. She's written books like Heart of the Samurai and Shadow of the Mountain. Her Northwoods Enchantment Lake mystery series. Sorry, the camera, there we go. And the newest one, Village of Scoundrels, which I'm looking forward to. So we'd like to give a warm welcome to Margi, and thank you for joining us on this unique bookends. And welcome, thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a kind of a fun way of visiting with readers, and yeah, kind of looking forward to it, see how it goes. I was also very much looking forward to being in actual Wadena, which is not very far from my cabin, and you know, which is where these mysteries take place that you mentioned. Well, they take place at a fictional lake called Enchantment Lake, but you know, I think people around Wadena would definitely recognize the scenes of swimming, boating, swarms of mosquitoes, berry picking, poisoned hot dishes, exploding bulldozers, and murder. You know, so typical northern Minnesota lake life. My cabin's on Cabacona Lake, which is just not too terribly far from Wadena. And I grew up in Fergus Falls. And I was going to say, I did get a great education in Fergus. I was very happy with life there, growing up there, and school. And I think the teachers are really good, with the exception possibly of my history teacher in high school, and I'm sure the history teachers there are great now. So I'm not casting any aspersions on the current teachers, but I went to school a long time ago, and it was all about memorizing dates and names. And so as a consequence, which I'm terrible at, and as a consequence, I didn't really like history, or I didn't think I liked history. So imagine my surprise when right after my first novel, Heart of a Samurai, was published, someone said, why did you want to write historical fiction? And I was absolutely shocked. I had no idea that's what I was writing, historical fiction. And, and now that's probably largely, with the exception of the mysteries and some picture books, and even my picture books are historical fiction. You know what I mean? I'm just realizing that too, because this one, which takes place at Split Rock Lighthouse, that takes place about 100 years ago. So there you go. I guess what I figured out is that history really is comprised of stories, and often really wonderful stories. So most of my books have been based on true stories, real people who really lived. The first Japanese person to come to America in this one, and most of the other ones are based on real people too, including my new one. And I actually want to talk very briefly about both my new books. Oh, but before I forget, I should say I've got one more of these coming out this fall called The Silver Box to complete the trilogy. So anyway, I had 2 new books come out just in time for everyone to get locked in. So I kind of missed my book launch, but Village of Scoundrels, mentioned before, and The Littlest Voyager, and they're both historical fiction. One is based on the true story of a real village in France that sheltered many hundreds, possibly thousands of Jewish children and teenagers rescued from French concentration camps. And this one is about a little red squirrel who stows away in a Voyager canoe. One is considered historical fiction, and one is considered historical fantasy. Can you guess which one it is? But I'm going to start by talking about this one. And I am also going to, I think what I'm going to do is share my screen because I have a little slideshow. So let's see if this is going, let's see how this is going to work. Please ignore all the mess on my desktop if it shows up. All right, so are you seeing that and still hearing me? Okay, all right. So, Village of Scoundrels. I first ran into this story when I was researching Shadow on the Mountain, which is also based on the true story of a real person who I interviewed in Norway. He, in 2011, he got involved in the French, or not the French resistance, in the Norwegian resistance during World War II, and became a courier, delivering coded messages on his bicycle and on skis. And then he became a spy while he was still a teenager, and eventually has to escape to Sweden over the mountains on skis, a journey that takes 5 nights. He has to ski at night to because people were chasing him. So, and all that's true. But anyway, so I was researching that book and I ran into this little snippet of a story about a village in France that was located high on a plateau, a little bit out of the eye of the German occupiers, didn't have a policeman in the early years of the war, and started sheltering Jewish refugees. When the gendarmes from the valley would come up to the town, they usually would get a warning, and they would send all the hidden children out into the forest to hide, or to and this is a picture of the forest, pick mushrooms or blueberries or something like that. And when the gendarmes went away, the village children would go out into the forest and sing a little song that would let the hidden children know that it was safe to come back. So I tucked this away in my mind. I wasn't going to use it because it was something that happened in France, not Norway. And in the meantime, I finished Shadow on the Mountain, and then West of the Moon, and then The Bamboo Sword. And then in this black space right here, I hit a low point. I hit, let's say it was right around November of 2016. When I got very depressed and I didn't know what I wanted to, I didn't know what to write about. And then I remembered this little snippet of these people in France, in this village. And I thought, you know, I spent a long time writing a novel. I spent a lot of time with my characters. I really want to spend it with good people doing the right thing. And so that's when I sort of thought, well, I got to find out more about that place. And so I started doing research. And interestingly, there are books written about the place. But what I discovered was that a lot of the people involved in this rescue effort were themselves teenagers. So, and this picture shows both the some of the teenage refugees who are just living with the village children, some of the village children, and some of these people are involved in some clandestine activities and illegal activities as well. So I got very interested in telling the stories of the teenagers who were involved with a lot of a variety of clandestine activities, including this guy who was only 17 when he forged his own mother out of an internment camp in France. And he later, he's Jewish, he wasn't allowed to go to medical school as he wanted, so he just forged his papers to say he was a med student, and he went to medical school, at least for a while, until it got too dangerous. And that's, you can read about that in my story. And this is one of his handiworks. So he forged up to 50 documents a week for people hidden in this village, including one for Hannah, who you'll see in a minute. Pierre Piton is the person who my character Philippe is based on. He was only 17 when he started smuggling people over the border to Switzerland, because at times it got too dangerous for both adults and children to stay in the village, and they had to be smuggled into Switzerland. And he would put on his Boy Scout uniform. He looked quite young, and pretend to be out on an outing and help people get over the border. Catherine Cambisedes is the one on the right here. She was very fearful, but she got over it well enough to carry messages, money, and contraband for the French resistance. And the woman laughing on the left is my friend Nellie Trocmé, who is the daughter of the pastor and sort of the spiritual leader of this community. She lives in St. Paul. She's about 96 years old. She's now my best friend. And she was so unbelievably helpful to me in writing this book and telling stories and introducing me to a lot of people. Well, I'm going to get to it also in a second. Paul Modula was a little boy who helped deliver the forged papers, and my character Jules is based on this little kid. And then I also write about some of the people who were sheltered there. Hannah and Max were met and fell in love in a French concentration camp. They were both able to be rescued, and they were taken to this village, and eventually both had to sneak into Switzerland. And I was very, very fortunate to be able to interview them in their apartment in Queens a couple years ago. And just recently, at the end of February, I was in New York City, and Hannah and Max joined me to talk with 7th and 8th graders in schools there about their experiences during the war. And it was just riveting. It was an amazing experience for everyone. The kids rushed them after they spoke and asked for their autographs. So it was really, it's been amazing. The whole process of writing this book has been an amazing opportunity to meet some of the most amazing people I can imagine meeting, including some of these people that I interviewed in France, and Renee Kahn-Silver down here on the left, who's also sheltered on the plateau during this time. So I was told I should read from the book, and yeah, that's what I'm going to do. But I guess you can see me, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read, and I have a couple of little images that go along with the reading, and so I'll just do it that way. And I am going to start pretty close to the beginning. The village, as I mentioned before, did not have any policemen, and that's obviously part of the reason they got away with what they did. But a policeman comes in 1942, and that's about where I start the story. By the time Perdant arrived, winter had settled in, and the streets were snow-covered and slippery. Since the village was built on the side of a steep hill, this could make for treacherous going. He was mincing his way to the cafe across from his hotel when a loud, sustained shriek made him stop in the middle of the street. Someone in danger, distress? Perhaps his brand new job as a sole police officer was about to begin with something truly dramatic. He turned his head, all his senses alert. Perhaps one of the illegals said to be hiding here was trying to murder someone. If he could just pinpoint where the scream was coming from, he would dash to the rescue. The high, keening "ee" transformed to a squeal of "ah." And did he detect an element of glee in that scream? The sound grew closer and clearer, like a train engine echoing between stone walls, now muffled, now screaming, now rounding a corner, gathering speed. Then there, Careening at high speed down the street, aimed straight at him, came a train of sleds, ridden by teenagers. Surely they'll stop, Perdant thought. He flung up his free hand, palm first, as if he might stop them by sheer force of will. Quickly realizing that they couldn't possibly stop, he lunged out of their way at the last moment. Ooh, the riders screamed as they rocketed past him. No sooner had one sled gone by when another followed, then another. A cap blew off, a glimpse of red stockings, a hair ribbon, snow-frosted eyeglasses. Did that boy just stick his tongue out as he whizzed past? A little brown and white dog chased after, barking and barking. The squeals of delight echoed between the village shops, then changed tone when the teens zoomed past the town square. Sparks flew from the metal runners as the sleds clattered over the railroad tracks, and the screams faded as the riders rounded the corner and headed toward the bridge that spanned the river. Just couldn't remember what picture I had there. He knew the town was full of teenagers. They came from all over France to attend a high school meant to promote peace and international unity. A little too late for that, Perdant thought. Many of these students lived in boarding houses. It was known that some of them were foreign Jews and other illegals and undesirables. And since he was also quite sure it was not legal to ride sleds down the main street, there were obviously delinquents among them. Scoundrels, Perdant said aloud before he stepped into the cafe, notebook under his arm, ready to begin his first report. So most of those kids are involved in illegal activities, as he might suspect. And since I have these pictures, I'll go on and show you. So this was the image of the street. This is the street they sledded down. And so I didn't really realize it until I was looking at these archival photos, but I took a picture of that exact same street when I was there in the summertime. And in case it doesn't look too steep to you, here's the end of the street. It's quite, quite, like, I don't think I would dare sled down that thing, but they did. In fact, they got from class to class that way because the high school did not have a building. So classes were held all over town, and they would take their sleds and go from their English class to their mathematics class, and got around on sleds and skis a lot of the time. Oh, well, there's my little writing house. I can't remember what pictures I put in here, but out in my backyard. It doesn't look like that right now because it's not green up here. I don't know. Is it green in Wadena? No. Okay. All right. Oh, I was going to say just a couple of quick things about the Littlest Voyager, which, as I mentioned, is about a red squirrel who stows away in a Voyager canoe. And because he's longing for adventure, and he wants to wear a red hat and a Voyager sash. And needless to say, he's not very popular. I don't know if you've ever had a squirrel in your canoe, but I don't think it would go very well. And it doesn't. And it's especially hard on, he does make it all the way to Grand Portage, but then is when he discovers what they've gone all that long way to trade for. And he has sort of an existential crisis when he realizes this is what it means to be a voyageur. See if I can find that picture in here. I don't know, can you see that? Maybe if I escape, I think I can. Oh, stop share, that's what I do. Okay. That better?
Oh, yeah.
So I could read a little bit, or we could go on to questions. I'm looking at the time. How are we doing?
Let's see. So we go to 12:30, right? It's an hour. I can't hear anybody else but you and I.
Oh,
12:15.
12:15. All right, so we have a little bit more time. I would love to hear you read more or talk more.
I'm just going to read them. I'll just read the very, very beginning. It's quite short. The flash of red paddles, the sound of strong singing voices. I leapt to a higher branch for a better view of the mighty Ottawa River. Canoe after canoe after canoe, a whole brigade of canoes moved along the waterway below my treetop home. Each big birch bark canoe loaded with many bundled parcels, each propelled by a crew of 8 to 12 voyageurs. There's Jean-Pierre Petit-Le Rouge and his crew of voyageurs. Each voyageur paddling like mad and singing. I sang a song too. Come back, I want to go with you. No answer. I flung myself from branch to branch, trying to catch up with them. But soon there was just the sound of their song trailing behind as they paddled into the far away. Every spring, when the ice had well and truly melted, the voyageurs set off from my home near Montreal in their beautiful honey-colored canoes. Where did they go? What did they do there? What did they carry away in those canoes? What did they bring back when they returned months later with the autumn wind at their backs? Sometimes on their return, I caught the scent of the far away, pine cones sticky with resin, the sweet sap of maple trees, musky mushrooms, juicy berries, a multitude of nuts and seeds yet to be tasted. It was a smell that stirred up in me a wanderlust, a call to adventures of the grandest sort. I want to be a voyageur, I told my friends. Why shouldn't I be? Because you are a squirrel, my friends said. Because you cannot paddle a canoe? Because you cannot cook? Because at the portages you cannot carry a heavy bundle? This is what I said to them. I may not paddle, but I can sing. I may not cook, but I can eat. I may not carry much, but I can carry something. Well, said my friends, they will never let you into their canoe. Perhaps, I agreed, but their canoes are so big, there are plenty of places to hide, and I am so small, I can fit into one of their vest pockets. And of course, that's exactly where he is when the voyageurs set off the next spring. So that was also a lot of fun to write. And apparently, I have just been told by a guy in Canada that it's going to be popular in Canada. So good. Anyway, I'm seeing some questions, and why don't I just, or whoever is in charge of unmuting people, Lina, we can ask some questions, but I see snowing in Perham today. Oh my gosh. I see a question, did you write The Littlest Voyager and Village of Scoundrels at the same time? And yes, people are very impressed with my output, I have to say. And I try to say, yes, I just am a writing fool. I've got these 2 books this year and a mystery coming out. But the truth, I'll tell you the truth is this thing right here, I just recently found a file marked The Littlest Voyager 2003. So the answer is no. But it still was a lot of work because, you know, this year was really a crazy time of like trying to write a mystery while getting various passes back of these 2 books. So, well, not this year because they came out in arcs like a long time ago, but last year. So you're seeing, and even after they come out as arcs, you're still seeing passes. And so you're doing a lot of corrections and stuff. So it was an interesting time of like pulling out of one story into another one while also trying to write a brand new one. It's not something that I would, that I long to do again. But it's just the way just the way it is. This story circulated out in the, my agent was sending it out for years, and I just thought, no, nobody's gonna buy that weird story. So it's the one that got reviewed in the New York Times recently. Just, you cannot predict.
Cool. I have a question about arcs. When the arc gets put out, like sometimes when I'm reading arcs, I'll find like little mistakes or something.
Or big mistakes.
Yeah, yeah. Do you get a chance to then, do people give you feedback on that and you get a chance to fix that if there's some sort of issue?
Yeah, I don't like arcs because of that. I mean, people are reading these things and they're riddled with errors, and sometimes I do fairly big revisions and move things around. I mean, this arc, this book has chapters moved around and a lot. And I think I rewrote the end. I mean, it's it really changes, or can. On the other hand, this one, not one word changed from the arc, but that I think is the function sometimes of where the editor and the marketing department and the internal workings of the publishing house, and how soon, what do they want to have the book available for? What is it ALA, or is it some whatever book, NCTE or something? So they rush to get it out, and it's not really cleaned up the way I wish. When it's my book, I want it to be. I don't want there to be mistakes in it, but that does happen. Yeah, and somebody has asked, Mary, is the Littlest Voyager a chapter book? Yes, yeah, it's like for 7 to 10-year-olds. So it's the print is a little bit bigger. The chapters are short. There are a lot of great illustrations by Cheryl Pilgrim in it. And if you have some young friends that might enjoy some really goofy readings, a bunch of people have been reading chapters. You can access them on my website and under this on this page, or on my new YouTube channel. And a really cool thing that's going to be, I don't know if it's up yet, but it will be on Monday, is Cheryl Pilgrim, who did the illustrations, is kicking off part 2 when they finally reach Grand Portage. And she talks about the art and shows the original art, and shows how some of the art came to be. So it's pretty cool.
Cool. Do you enjoy writing more for the older young readers or younger young readers? And do you have any intention of writing for adults? I mean, granted, as an adult, I enjoy young reader books because some of them are written better than the stuff they write for adults. I don't know. They just remind me of why I love reading in the first place. So
yeah. I think a lot of times just the story that you want to tell dictates the format. And I mean, a little squirrel hiding in a Voyager canoe is probably going to be for a little bit younger reader, and just came out that way. And something about World War II and Holocaust related is probably going to be for a little bit, and especially teenagers who are doing very dangerous work. That's probably going to be, but I chose the teenagers because that was the audience I had in mind, were young, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids, or even younger, but you have to have some kind of you have to know something about World War II to have the context that you need for the story. Oh yeah. Choosing illustrator. Every publisher is a little bit different that way. And for Storms Coming, which was published by Minnesota Historical Society Press, they did ask me what I thought about having David Geister illustrate, and I'd seen his work, and so I said, yeah, wow. I mean, the colors are just incredible. You can see. And yeah, I think he did a really, really nice job. I'll show you one of my favorites. And with the Littlest Voyager, which is Holiday House is the publisher, Margaret Ferguson was my editor, and she asked me if I had any thoughts, which doesn't mean anything. I mean, they can ask you, but it doesn't mean that they're going to pay any attention to what you say. Yeah, I think that they found the illustrator. I didn't know Cheryl before, but no, I've kind of gotten to know her, and she's really fun. I like her a lot. But usually, and with my books with Abrams, they do now, usually they'll give me like 2 choices and say, which one do you like the best? And then they pay no attention to what I say. So, I don't know, Mary, what is your experience?
They don't let you choose, in my experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
They let you, when they chose the illustrator for Wild Boy, I wanted to make sure they didn't have things like the Eiffel Tower when the Eiffel Tower hadn't been built yet, those kinds of, so I was allowed to go through it to make sure there wasn't anything that didn't fit the time frame. But other than that, it's just, you just think, oh, let's just see what happens, and then
hope for the best.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that was
Yeah. Yep.
I'm sorry. We have a lot of people in our group that come to our meetings that are writers themselves, writers, poets, interested. So a lot of times, a lot of questions that we get asked are things like your process. Are you like I write every morning from 5 to 8 or kind of thing, or where you get your inspiration, research, things about the actual craft of writing. Could you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, and once again, I think I will just share my screen here again. So that's my little writing house, where I do like to go and escape from everything. And this is a way I like to start when I'm composing. I like to write on a piece of paper with a pen. And for a long time, for one whole book, I thought it's just such a waste of time because I write it out longhand and then I type it into the computer. And wouldn't it just be faster if I would just type from the beginning and skip the whole handwriting thing? And it took longer because I had to scratch all that stuff that I typed and start over and write first. And so I feel somewhat vindicated because now studies show that more parts of your brain fire when you're writing longhand with pen and paper than when you're typing on a keyboard. So apparently I need every part of my brain possible in order to come up with anything. So that's usually the way I start. And then, so it looks really messy like that. And then I type it in and print it out and write on it some more. And I do that many, many, many times. Many times. And well, this one, the notes and the margins are my editor's notes. And then of course, this is stuff I show to kids. And then copy editing, of course, is another thing. So this generates a lot of paper. This is my stack of drafts for Shadow on the Mountain. And so like I tell the kids, it's not, writing isn't easy for me. it's a little bit like this. That's me there on the lower corner. And over the course of a year and a half, 2 years it takes to write a book. It's a lot like mountain climbing until finally.
That is great.
Even when I'm done, I'm not done. So, but yeah.
I was listening to another author who just had a book come out, during the pandemic, and she was talking from her closet with a microphone and earphones and stuff. And it was Hilary St. John Mantel, and she was saying she also writes by hand. She writes by hand and then she types. And so I thought, maybe I should try that.
Well, what I tell people and kids is, if you're stuck, give it a try.
Yeah.
Just see what happens. I think what I like about it is that paper is very non-judgmental. There's no blinking cursor, like going, which is the way the cursor looks to me. And if you cross something out, you can usually read it anyway, so it's not gone. And a lot of times those little crossed out lines, the things you cross out in the heat of think you're doing better now, it's better, it's the better thing than what you wrote afterwards. So I just like the paper. I like the paper. And I think it's also because I'm so disorganized and messy in the way that I create things, that I can write in the margins and flip it over and, keep going all the way around the paper in a way you can't, typing, it just doesn't let you do that. At least my program doesn't. So, yeah.
So I was given the 5-minute warning, like probably
5 minutes ago?
Almost. But I wanted to make sure that we had time if there was anything, final things you wanted to add, and to also get a chance to say thank you so much. And I wish we could have gotten to meet and have lunch. Maybe after this is over, we can.
Yeah.
Really very amazingly interesting, and it was great of you to do this. And so if there's anything you'd like to add before we end, that would be great.
Oh no, I'll think of that after we're totally done.
Yeah.
And it's ended. I'll think of the thing I wanted to say. But I appreciate everybody being here, and it was lovely to talk with you all. And if there
If anybody's interested in buying your books, they're available through the Wadena County Historical Society and Travelin Storyseller. And you had said something about book plates.
Oh, right. Yeah, sure. If you would like a signed book plate, if you intend to buy a book for anyone, just email me. You can email me. If you don't have my email, you can get me through my website, and I'd be happy to send you a signed plate and a bookmark. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was an amazing, and I wish we had longer to talk because I still have so many questions, but thank you so much. This was